Hello and welcome to the short introduction to theory of change by YouthPact. Here we will look at what a theory of change is, why we should use it, and how it fits into both Peace for Youth and your specific project. Each Peace for Youth project has to have a theory of change model in place. So what exactly is theory of change? A theory of change is a causal framework of how and why a change process will happen in a particular context. Rather than projecting outcomes from your activities, a theory of change reverses that project by first focusing on what outcome you are seeking, your ultimate goal, and then thoroughly considering all preconditions necessary in order for you to achieve this goal. Interventions and activities are then based on your outcomes framework, so you know why you're doing them. A theory of change is a system with built-in indicators so that you know you're on track over time. It is also a process that makes assumptions explicit and identifies rationales for all preconditions and interventions or activities. It is both a process and a product. Basically, a theory of change is an outline of what we want to achieve, how we will achieve it, and why we want to achieve it. There are 6 main components that make up a theory of change. These are outcomes and preconditions, interventions, assumptions, rationales, indicators, and narrative. We are now going to look at each of these components individually, starting with outcomes and preconditions. Outcomes are what your project wants to achieve. This can either be your ultimate outcome or some short-term outcomes. Preconditions are what has to change if the long-term goal is going to happen. An example of this in Peace for Youth is the amount of engagement that must happen. For example, 12 hours per week. This helps you to avoid doing things that are good, but don't necessarily get you where you want to go. Interventions. Interventions are the actions or activities that your project uses to achieve a particular outcome. This might be the use of group work or residentials, for example. Interventions follow outcomes, and not vice versa. As with how a theory of change model works, you will set the outcome and then determine what interventions work best in order for you to achieve this outcome. By identifying interventions as supporting a particular outcome, it helps focus on what actually has to be done and also who is best placed to do it. Interventions can be placed on any part of an outcomes framework map. Assumptions. An assumption, like a precondition, is a condition that is necessary for your program success. However, unlike a precondition, it is already in place and does not need to be brought about by your project. However, it does need to be included in the theory of change. An example of an assumption within Peace for Youth is the assumption that young people from different backgrounds are more likely to engage if they partake in community relations workshops. When your project states your assumptions, this is a good time to take into account the various conditions that your program's success will rely on. Assumptions are crucial because if they are incorrect, it can completely alter how your program will work. Rationales. A rationale explains every step of why the outcomes are needed and why they would lead to the upper level outcome or your ultimate outcome. For example, these help to explain why are you using a certain intervention? Why are you doing interventions or activities in a certain way? And why are these most likely to bring about the outcome? A developed rationale at this level are crucial determinants of the plausibility and feasibility of the theory of change. Indicators. An indicator is the actual variable that is being measured. For example, in Peace for Youth, an outcome may be that young people will progress into education. Therefore, the indicator would be the actual number of young people who progress. Narratives. The narrative should be a plain language summary. It should be short and compelling and explain your theory of change map. Your narrative can have different versions to emphasize different points, different levels of detail, different interventions, etc. Now that we have looked at all the components that make up a theory of change, it is important to understand that a theory of change is a visual tool as well as a process. Here is an example of how a theory of change model can look. As part of the Peace for Youth process, each project will have to come up with their own theory of change, to include all the components that we have talked about. This can be a creative process, as well as creating an important and useful tool. So now that we know what theory of change is and how it can look, why should we use a theory of change model? Well, programs and projects contain many people, many actions and many unplanned events. So a theory of change can help you work in that complex and ever-changing environment. With a theory of change, we can make explicit what is implicit, understanding and articulating why we do what we do. What we produce can be used to support reflective practice as well as monitoring and evaluation. The visual representation can be shared with others as a tool to explain our approaches. Also, every project has produced information on the theory of change for the application, so we can use it and implement it as a pathway to change. And finally, applying a theory of change helps you to achieve the desired results in practice, your ultimate outcome. But how does theory of change fit into Peace for Youth? Well, as already stated, each project is required to have a theory of change model. Each model will be different and specific to each particular project. However, what binds each model is that they will have the same ultimate goal, as this is set out by SEUPB in the programme call. This is to enhance the capacity of young people to form positive and effective relationships with others of a different background and to make a positive contribution to building a cohesive society. Also, within this, each project will have the same set of base outcomes and indicators, again as set out by SEUPB. Most of you will be aware that there are 17 indicators which fall under the three main outcome areas as shown here. These are the base outcomes and indicators that you must include in your delivery and therefore also within your theory of change. However, you are not limited to these. Each project can have their own additional outcomes and indicators depending on the nature of the programme and their delivery. This has been a quick introduction into what a theory of change model is, how it can be used and how it fits into Peace for Youth. But what next? YouthPact will be offering a more detailed facilitation and training to all projects specifically on theory of change. If you are interested in this, please contact your development officer. Also, if you have time and wish to learn more about theory of change, here is a link to another short video which explains theory of change in simple terms. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. If you require any further information on this or anything else YouthPact has to offer, please do not hesitate to contact myself or one of my colleagues. Thank you.